legal reasons, you should get a notification. Ah, sweet.
Yes, Craig recording the call.
All right, sweet. So we're live. Mr. Bradbury.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Welcome to the Basery podcast. This will be, I don't know what format I'll actually be able to upload this on. I don't know if it'll be an audio or a video file. I know Skype records it as a video, so we might actually put a video out there. But at this stage, nobody knows that you're on the podcast, and I'm sure people are going to be very excited when they find out who it is. I've been winding people up a week as I've got an amazing guest for the podcast this week. And I hate calling it guest. I just want to say, I've got an amazing mate on the podcast this week. So,
yeah.
Got my mate Lee Bradbury on the podcast. How you doing, Lee?
Yeah, good. Especially as my beard's looking much better than yours at the moment.
I know. I got it cut. Yeah. So I was actually going to bring up how many pens can you stick, and if we've got video, we could probably do that now. Brad Beard is looking strong.
Later video could be after. I can take another picture if you like and beat you again.
I was going to say we'll get the photo. I think you had 24 was your record before, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, something like that.
I'd be really shit right now. Mine's very thin. Yeah, I'm looking very clean and very pretty and very One Direction-y. So for those of you who don't know who Lee Bradbury is, a lot of you will would have had the opportunity to train with Lee previously. A lot of you guys will know who Lee is, and I'm sure will be very excited to listen to what me and Lee are going to talk about today. But just for those of you who don't know who Lee is, you fools, just do you want to give us a quick background check on and who you are and why we should listen to what you've got to say today, mate?
Well, so background-wise, I've been running since I was a kid. Started in the gym since I was 16. So, 30 odd now. I've got quite a bit of experience of training, as it were. Joined the military for quite a bit, working in bomb disposal. Moved to Dubai. Obviously, then started coaching.
Bomb disposal.
Bomb disposal, yeah. So
if you needed any more confirmation how much of a badass Lee is, it was bomb disposal in the army.
Yeah, so obviously in that time as well, I got to training myself, things like weighted marches and stuff like that. So again, a different type of training than what I was used to before I joined. Obviously trained other guys while I was there, helping them get fit for operations, especially. We'll talk about it when we come over to my books, but obviously the state of fitness in the military is, on the whole, I'd say it's pretty dire.
Interesting.
Yeah. Obviously moved to Dubai. That's where I met yourself and started working in CrossFit gym. Obviously,
what a time that was.
It was a simpler time, an epic time, a bearded time.
A more bearded time. So just to interrupt that, I some of the most developmental years of my career as a coach were when I had the opportunity to work alongside Lee, and I felt like it was I'm very lucky to have had that opportunity to work and learn from you whilst we were working at LifeSpark together. And I'm very happy to be sharing this with you now. I feel like this is an awesome reunion of beards.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel the same way, because obviously we did things, I wouldn't say differently, we just had different ideas, which I think really
completely
in terms of our training. So I learned a lot from yourself while I was out there as well. And like I said, it was a great time, a great experience.
Absolutely.
And then obviously from there, I've moved back to the UK. I had my own facility for a few years. So I've been down that road as well in terms of the stresses and strains of running a gym, as I'm sure you can attest to. But it was a very rewarding experience as well. So definitely something I don't regret. And then from there, I've moved to the Lake District, and I just basically just do a lot of fell running and still working in the gym and looking at getting into some open water swimming.
Open water swimming?
Yeah.
As in,
anything that's outside of a pool, really. So obviously with the Lake District, we've got a lot of lakes in varying lengths and distances. So I'm building up to sort of 3 to 5 miles swimming constant in preparation for my first Ironman triathlon next year.
I was going to say, is that with a scope to get to tris and Ironman?
Yeah, I mean, because I did tries before, but I've never done an Ironman because swimming was always my limiting factor. So so I'm looking at getting some more open water training. So Yeah.
Whilst on the subject of running and your feats, maybe that's where we'll start. Some of you may know you've done some quite impressive things in terms of running races. Do you want to give us kind of like a rundown of a couple of the bigger ones that you've done over recent years or over the years?
I mean, probably at least worldwide, probably one of the most famous is Marathon des Sables, or MDS as the kids call it.
The MDS.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was billed as the toughest foot race in the world. They were obviously quite clever in not calling it the toughest running race in the world.
Yeah.
Because it is open to all abilities, as it were. The cutoffs are very generous. But it was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had of a race. So for those who don't know, it's a marathon a day for 7 days, with a double marathon on day 4. So a multi-stage event in the Sahara Desert, on the Morocco side, and it's self-sufficient. You have to carry all your kit that you need for the week.
And as it's running through the desert, I'm guessing it's not your typical running terrain. Obviously, that's quite a challenge as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think a lot of people tend to think. I mean, sure, because living in the UAE, you've got the same sort of varied landscape. Everyone thinks that it's just going to be rolling sand dunes, whereas there was, a lot of sort of rocky terrain as well. There's a couple of mountains in there as well to run over. So yeah, the terrain was varied, but on the whole, it was just sand dunes. And on the double marathon day, the first 40 Ks was literally just sand dunes, and it absolutely snapped me.
I can imagine.
But yeah, no, it was a good race. My training went really well for that. My pack and kit was on point. So my pack weighed probably about 7.5 kilos at the start.
Wow.
I mean, the top guys are running with a 4-kilo pack. But then some people who maybe went a bit crazy with the comforts and the food were carrying sort of close to 20 kilos.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
I mean, I'm going to throw out.
Sorry. Is that more of an experience thing and knowing what your absolute bare necessities are to get by, or is it more of a discipline thing of like, I don't need this, I'm going to chuck that out and just do without?
It was a bit of both. So when I first signed up to it, it was the first, obviously, it's classed as an ultra multi-day event. It's the first one I'd ever done. So I kind of threw myself in the deep end. So immediately, I'm sure many people have been there when they've done an event they've never done. They feel like they're not good enough for it, or they're not experienced enough for it. So I did the usual of going on trawling the internet to find out what everyone else was using, what everyone else did, instead of trusting my own experiences and abilities. And it just became like a never-ending hole of someone says they use these trainers, someone said they use this kit, and there was so much conflicting stuff out there that it became like a real head fuck. So I left the Facebook group that was for MDS and all that stuff, and then just thought, you know what? I've ran since I was like 7 years old. I kind of know what works for me. I've lived in the desert, so I'd done races in the desert through Urban Ultra and things like that. So I had experience of running there. So I just trusted my own knowledge. It was like people were saying you can't use road shoes out there, and I thought, well, it's just mostly sand, so why can't you? So I stuck with my ASICS trainers, and they absolutely blew me out the water. I didn't get a single blister on MDS. So part of it was that, and then part of it was accepting that it's going to be a harsh week living out in the desert. And again, military experience kind of, I've done that before. I've eaten cold food for 7 days and, slept in the cold and stuff. So that didn't really faze me. So I knew I could get by with minimal comforts, which then obviously meant I could keep the weight down. So it was kind of both worked well with each other. So I ended up wearing the same clothes for the 7 days that I was running.
Smelling amazing.
Yeah, I had to burn them afterwards because they just didn't come back normal afterwards. But yeah, so it was kind of combo of the two.
And then what have you done? When did you do that one, MDS?
2015, so it was the 30th anniversary edition.
Oh, sweet. And then what have you done since then?
So I...
What's the spine race? There was a spine race you did recently.
Yeah, so that was my most recent one. I did that in January this year.
Yeah.
So I did the Spine Challenger, which is kind of the fun run version of the Spine. So the Spine Challenger and the Spine are the same race. It's essentially one's the full length of the Pennine Way, i.e. the Spine, which is 268 miles. I did the baby version, as I said, which is the Challenger, which is 108 miles along the Pennine Way. But my Garmin said 111, so my Garmin's obviously right, not the race organizer.
Absolutely.
So basically 100 miles, 108 miles non-stop, unsupported. So basically, you just had to obviously crack on through the route, navigate the route yourself. And then there was one checkpoint along the way where you could get your head down and stuff like that. It was my first 100 miler. So again, it's kind of got quite a reputation in the UK for one of the toughest 100 milers in the UK. It's my first experience of running constantly for just over 40 hours.
I was going to say, that's how long did it take? And then for anyone who doesn't know, 100 miles is over 160 kilometers. So that's an incredible. And you said 40 hours?
Yeah, 40 hours. And they've got because it's in the winter as well, obviously in the UK. You have to carry quite an extensive mandatory kit list. So my kit ended up weighing, and this was me generally lightweight stuff, and again, not really packing too many extra comforts. My pack weighed 12.5 kilos.
Jesus. 12 kilos for 40 hours, 100 miles in January in the UK. Unreal.
That was probably one of the toughest things I've done so far.
Yeah.
So MDS was kind of one of the best experiences I've had, but the Spine Challenges are probably one of the toughest things I've done so far.
It sounds dreadful. So what is it that these, obviously in the last couple of years, you've taken on these longer and these ultras and gotten into, you've always had a running background. What is it that makes you want to put yourself out there and into these super challenging environments? What's the reason for it? What's your drive to kind of like have to do all the training for it and put yourself in these super harsh conditions and do these mental runs?
One, it gives me focus on my training. So I'm sure lots of people have been there where you plateau in your training, or you're lacking motivation because you've got no kind of end result to it, as it were. And obviously we chase things like strength numbers and body composition and stuff like that, which again I've done myself as you know, when I was in Dubai, especially looking at competing in CrossFit. But I think for me, running, having a big event just allows me to focus on getting outdoors, because I absolutely love being out, especially now being in the Lake District in the Fells. But ultimately, I just want something that I know is going to absolutely kick the ass out of me.
Yeah.
That's what's for me. When I look back on my life and I look at my achievements, most of them will be related to pushing through adversity and in some sort of tough mental challenge, whether that's a race or a competition or whatever, and thinking, that was an amazing experience because of how hard it was and the elation I had at the end. When I did MDS, I was absolutely broken by the last day and just literally broke down crying because I was just so happy that I'd done this big thing that a lot of people said, is impossible to do, as it were.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
And it was the same on the Spine, because we finished at like about 4 a.m, so it was pitch black. And like I said, we've been going for almost 2 days straight, almost delirious. And then just at the end, it was just like so emotional, but in a good way. And I think that's kind of what I chase with these challenges. But also, I like to get out of my comfort zone, which is why I'm looking at doing swimming and triathlons like that as well. So it is purely just for the experience and the feelings when you've completed something.
Man, fair enough. You're more nuts than I am. I do. For me, my limit to, like the other day, I tried to run a marathon and row a marathon with no training. Absolutely, like with on the back. We do a Hell Week in the gym as well. We tested it, me and then we just off the back of a Hell Week, and this was day 7 of training. I thought, right, we're going to do a marathon run, marathon row. The story of why we did it is even stupider, and that for me was just absolutely like, I didn't finish it. I did half marathon run, half marathon row instead, which I wasn't too mad about.
That's still pretty good on cardio though.
Yeah, literally the longest I'd run before that. I'd done a 5K this year, and then managed to bust out a half marathon, which is the 3rd longest distance I've ever run, and into a half marathon row. And then Joe Kwakabani did it with 0 training, marathon run into marathon row in 7.5 hours. Absolutely insane.
So Joe's still doing it then.
Yeah, and Joe's the same as like you. The crazier the better, and he was loving it. He was singing Coldplay as he finished his last couple of strokes on the row. But for me, like, I love, the crazier the workout, for me, the more enticing it is to do it, just not to that scale. I think I need to kind of take a leaf out of your book and pick up some bigger challenges, drop a couple kilos, and maybe look at some long distance running.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've pushed for things like double bodyweight back squat and stuff like that. And for, as you know, for a skinny guy like me, that's quite a big challenge. And I was absolutely, stoked when I got that. But for me personally, so far, nothing's compared to endurance challenges, because I think they just put you in a completely different place mentally. So yeah, and even like a horrible like Fran or something like that, which is an absolute killer long buster. Again, you've got to go to that dark place.
Yeah.
You've not got to hold on for that long, especially if you're
No.
looking at like a sub 2-3 minute or whatever. It's a dark place for a little bit, but for something where you're running 100 miles, you're in that dark place. I mean, I was in that dark place from probably mile 30. But like 70 miles of just, and the weather was so shit. And I was having issues with my stomach, so I was having to take these ranitidine tablets like every 4 hours because I was just getting horrible stomach cramps and stuff. So it's just, that's, I think that's pushing through it, and you can think, you kind of get a test of yourself then, I think. So yeah.
Jesus. All right. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit with your running. What was it that made you kind of leave the you've always been into running, as we keep saying, but to leave the kind of CrossFit and the gym scene and change your training towards running? What was the kind of driving factors in taking yourself out of the gym more and putting yourself out in the running? And then what are the kind of pros and cons to each of them?
So the only reason really I've stopped doing CrossFit is just because I don't have access to it anymore. So the lakes obviously is a great place for outdoor activities and things. And where I live, so near Keswick, there's one CrossFit gym, which is CrossFit Cumbria. And they don't really take on new members. They've kind of hit capacity, which, is obviously good for them, but it means that I can't get in there and do any training. So, and CrossFit is quite tough to do on your own regularly. As me, especially when we were at LifeSpark and we'd kind of try and hook up together to train. But if that, it was always before morning class or in the lunchtime break, and it'd be on your own, and it's just like, it sucks balls. So it's very hard to motivate yourself to do it on my own. And then even the gyms here are kind of like leisure centers rather than proper gyms. So, there's one squat rack. There's no platform, so it's, again, you can't really go start wadding in a little leisure center and stuff like that. So
they'd probably frown at you if you took your shirt off and started being all over the place.
And start screaming and shouting and throwing barbells everywhere. So that to be honest, that's one of the main reasons why I don't do CrossFit as much. I've got a big sandbag, so I do WODs in the garden with a sandbag. So I still throw that about, and I've got a nice quiet road just outside my house, so I can still do some intervals with my sandbag over my shoulder and things like that. So I still tuck into that every now and again. And then, basically the reason I've not done as much gym work is just because of the volume of running I'm doing. So again, something's got to give. And at the moment, because of my goals of doing a lot more long distance races, so I've got a few more 50 milers coming up this year. I'm about to go to Guernsey next week for a 36 miler. And then I'm looking to do the Bob Graham attempt next year, which is, again, kind of, one of the toughest races in the UK. So that's 60 odd miles taking.
Great.
Yeah.
I heard Ross Edgley talking about that.
I think he's looking at maybe giving it a bash. But he'll probably do something crazy like with a log on his back or something.
Drag a tree or something.
Yeah. I mean, he's a specimen, that guy. He's props to him for the swim. So it's kind of like a classic fell runner challenge. So you've got 24 hours to do 60 odd miles, and it takes in 40 odd Wainwrights, which are mountains in the lakes. And it's crazy a level of ascent. So basically you've got to try and do that in under 24 hours. So that's what I'll be looking to do next year in July.
Awesome. Amazing.
So and the pros to that are, obviously, I'm not hurting myself. I'm not getting injured because I'm not doing too much. I've always been pretty good at balancing my training. I'm 33 now and I've still never been injured, touch wood. And another pro is, obviously, I'm not then just living fitness all the time. It means I've got time to go out for a swim, go out for a hike, take dogs out for walks and stuff like that. Cons are I'm not as strong as I was in Dubai. I'm still strong. Like I said, I still go to the gym 3 times a week. I still focus on squatting, deadlifting. I still do Olympic lifts. I just can't go as heavy because I've got no platform, and I obviously can't start throwing bars around. So it's kind of more maintenance on the Olympic side. And it's mostly, to be fair, it's mostly power cleans and some split jerks rather than snatches and stuff like that, just because of the space. So I still do some strength work, but it's all on the one, just a bit of maintenance, because obviously strength is massively important for running, and a lot of people who are runners don't do enough of it. And 2, it's just to stop me from going insane, because I love training in the gym as well. I love barbell work, especially Olympic lifting. So it's I do keep my foot in there as well. So
on that point, before we move on, I just want to touch on strength training for runners. So I train a girl who's just done 2 oceans, which is quite a lot of ascent. I can't remember what the total ascent is, but there's 2 really big undulating peaks in it. And she said, like, going into it, was real nervous about the hills, because she's done 17 marathons, but they're all fairly flat compared. So we did a bunch of single leg strength work and then loads of sled work.
Nice.
Just basically just longer bouts of pushing the sleds around. Like, what would you say is probably the most effective way, or the most important way for runners to incorporate some strength training into their training?
Single leg straight away. That is, for me, is the go-to. If you look at the running biomechanics, most of it relies on strong glutes, good hip extension. So that, again, that's from the glutes primarily. And when you look at a lot of injuries, such as ITB syndrome, calf issues, etc., runner's knee, a lot of it, again, comes from either weak or fatigued glutes. So working on strength and strength on the glutes is kind of a big thing. And then obviously combining that with some hamstring work. So single leg is obviously one of the best ways to train the glutes. So lunges, step ups, all that sort of good stuff. Again, that's staple in my training. And when I've worked with runners, that's one of the first things we look at include. And then it's not just body weight, because again, I've been doing a lot of research at the moment, subscribing to other coaches that are running coaches that then prescribe some strength training. And it's all body weight stuff, and it's all, working on doing 30-second circuits of, high knees or, step ups with no weight and things like that. And I just don't think that serves any value whatsoever towards making especially when it comes to hills. You want to be able to push an amount of force through that hill and get that same force back. Then you want to have strong glutes and strong quads. And the only way you're going to do that is to really push yourself on the intensity side, i.e. the weight side of things. So, you're not looking at training like a powerlifter, but you want to be putting some good weight through the, whether it's on your hands or your shoulders or whatever, when you're doing these single leg exercises. And then, working on sled pushes and drags for different modalities. So obviously doing sort of short bursts of heavier weight or longer bursts, with no weight, just for the mental thing.
Amazing. It makes sense. Let's move on now. That will tangent nicely into what you've got going on at the moment. You've just released 2 ebooks. One fit for service, which I didn't get because I'm not planning on joining the military. I should have done that because I failed my PRMC. But structural balance, I've downloaded and read. I haven't done it yet. I'm just kind of waiting for an off season. But do you want to just talk us through kind of the focus of structural balance from the bits you've just published, and then the importance of that in people's training?
Yeah. So I mean, as you just said there, the structural balance program is perfect for like an off-season type training, or someone returning from injury, or even just someone getting into strength training for the first time. So that was what it was kind of aimed at. I mean, the main aim was for an off-season program, because obviously sport-specific training tends to also be very biased. So whether that's CrossFit, where it's kind of a lot of sagittal type movements, forward and back, which is absolutely fine because that's what you need to excel in that particular discipline.
Right, that's the sport. Yeah,
it's very hard to then implement lots of other types of training when you're focused on competitions for CrossFit or running, etc., etc. So this was there to give you a bit more kind of foundations in your off season, or like I said, returning from an injury. And it's just focused on a few basic principles. Obviously, range of motion is number one priority. So that's at the foundation of athleticism. So if you haven't got the right range of motion for particular exercises, you're obviously then going to start compensating with other joints or muscle groups, which then is going to lead to potential injury down the line. But also it's just efficient. So we look at a few basic assessments: shoulders, hips, ankles, because they're kind of like the big three. And then obviously suggesting exercises, mobility routines, etc., to improve that. Then the next sort of basic concept is owning that range of motion. So it's one thing to have that range of motion; it's another to be strong and stable. So we look at obviously then stability exercises. So more of an active type assessment, and then from there, the next basic foundation for me personally, what I think based on my coaching experience, is a good aerobic foundation. Not only is that good for endurance, but it's good for recovery, and it's also good for strength training. You know, if you've got a much more efficient heart and lungs, they're obviously going to allow you to recover quickly between heavy sets, or sessions, whether that's daily sessions or even a double session in the same day, and that will again allow you to then put more volume into your training and be able to recover from it. It'll help develop general work capacity, which then you can build on top of with specific, anaerobic training or specific sport work capacity. So that kind of forms the bottom layer, and then from there, strength. And because it's an off-season program, we're obviously focused on multi-planar stuff, so not just the sagittal plane. Right. So lots of rotational work, lots of lateral work, and lots of single-sided work. Because again, a lot of strength programs tend to use barbells, which are absolutely amazing, but again, your sort of weaker side isn't really getting as much love as it potentially needs. So totally. We're just focusing on starting off with things like landmine presses for the upper body, and obviously basic lunge patterns, split squats, stuff like that for the lower body, and progressing. And then core stability. So again, focusing on resisting motion at the spine, so minimizing the incidence of lower back pain and making the core more efficient at transferring power out to the arms and legs, which again is the powerhouse. So using a few sort of funky core exercises that some people may not have come across. And then I've broken it down into 3 levels, so level 1, 2, and 3. So a little quick assessment based on body weight ability to determine which level you are, and then obviously starting there and progressing through the program.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable program. I'll put the link of it below this. And if for nothing else, it's got a list of videos of Lee Bradbury just working out. So it's worth it just for that. Yeah, I love that. I watched all the videos. Even though I was like, I know what an air squat is, but I'm still going to watch it anyway. And then, so that's kind of that's the program, an overview of the program. And it kind of does explain this a little bit. But what's the kind of the main reason? Why do you think it's so important to have structural balance? In terms of left to right, upper to lower in the body balance, but also a balance in training. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Is if you're constantly attacking the sport and you don't have an off season, then it's just going to lead to fatigue and injury. So it is really important, and we really value, or especially in base 3, the concept of deload phases or having an off season. So a program like this is ideal, but a lot of people just seem to want to be foot on the gas the whole time. What are some of the why is it so important for people to have some balance in their training from a perspective of, like you said, structural left to right, but then having some on and off as well?
So straight away, the main reason is minimize the incidence of injury. If you've got that balance, like I said, all the muscles are doing the right jobs, they've all got equal amounts of strength from left to right, like I said, or, for example, things like the lower back, which tends to be very weak in a lot of people. So again, we focus on that. That just reduces the impact of injuries. Number 2, stops mental burnout. So for me, again, if you're kind of just hammering the same type of training day in, day out for years, of course, eventually it's just going to start to wear thin, and then motivation starts to dip, and then you find that you're not as consistent. And obviously consistency is one of the main things. So this just allows a little breathing time where you can focus on dialing it down a little bit in terms of volume and intensity, but you're still getting a very, very results-driven program. And so then you can come back to your sport or your competition prep with a sort of kind of fresh mind, and also knowing that you're kind of generally prepared then to start smashing it in the gym or outdoors, whatever your discipline is. So I'd say that's the big one for me, is is like you said, the off-season element to it, where you can just give your brain a break, and just take a step back and do something new and different. Especially because of the way the program's designed, it allows you then to focus on doing these things, just getting outside, going for a walk, going for a hike, not just being glued to the gym all the time, but still being able to push yourself where needed.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's so important. We talk about it a lot on the podcast, is just the benefit of going for a walk once a week instead of hitting the gym. If you've got 6 workouts, do 5 workouts and go for a walk, get outside, and don't be so attached to the gym. And that's what I think people who try and go full on at something, for either it be CrossFit or running, the risk of burnout's a lot higher. But even just the stress level that you create, because you're constantly stressing the body, you need to be able to pull yourself away from that and do something different and something beneficial for your body. People think it's a joke, but I'm like, go for a 45-minute walk as close to nature as you can in Dubai. Just do it without your headphones and do it without your phone. Just go for a 45-minute walk. Everyone's just like, how, for time, or like at what pace? I'm just like, chill out. Like, it's
and this is definitely because the mindset of training as well is a big key factor in training results, etc. And like you said, training people to be able to switch off is, I think, an important quality as well. So for me, especially living here now, I love being able to just go. I get to go for sort of 15-20-minute walks to work and from work to where I park my car, through a nice park and all that stuff. And even just if I'm feeling really sore when I get out of the car to go to work, just walking for that 20-30 minutes straight away, I feel less sore. I feel, I've got my vitamin D. I feel, like I can kind of hit the day running, as it were. And there's lots of studies out there now that show the benefits of low load aerobic work for recovery and longevity. So, even if you don't really see a training benefit to it, just think of the recovery benefit. That's going to allow you then to hit the next session hard. Or, just like I said, longevity. At the end of the day, we're all focused on training, but we also want to look at the big picture of when we're older,
for sure,
do this into our later ages. So, and things like low impact aerobic work is going to allow us to keep doing that.
Yeah, looking at it as what can I achieve in the next 3 months? What can I still be doing this in 15 years? Is definitely about blowing stuff up. Listen to the man; he's 33 and he's never been injured. Touch wood. All right, and then obviously you've got a lot of experience in different domains. So you've got running, you've got a military background, you've created some literature around training, and you've owned your own facility, been a coach for many years. What are the, if we haven't covered them already, kind of essential pieces of information you could offer to our listeners to help them with their training in gym?
I think the first bit of advice is own the basics, as I said to you before, and obviously we look at that in the.
I like that.
Structural balances, and again, even people like well, not people, but training like CrossFit and stuff, they again preach the same thing. It's the whole mechanics before intensity and things like that, and that's it is the basics. And I think a lot of people tend to try and just ignore the basics because they want quick fixes, quick results. But that is the reason why a lot of athletes are still training into the later ages or performing at high levels. You look at Matt Fraser and people like that, or top runners, top cyclists, etc. The reason they are where they are is because they own the basics and they do things like mobility every day, cool downs properly, warm ups properly, etc. If it's good enough for the top level athletes, then it's good enough for the general population as well. So and that starts with like I said before, range of motion. That is the first thing. You need to have the range of motion required for the exercises that you're doing or the sport that you're doing, and own that range of motion, through stability. And if you're unsure, get a coach to assess you. So take through some basic assessments, give you some exercise to improve on that, and just make sure you're retesting periodically. So it's not just about performance testing; it's about range of motion and stability testing as well. That should always precede fitness testing. And then, as I said, I'm a big believer in aerobic conditioning. So don't be afraid to do a bit of cardio. It's not going to kill the gains. I was still running and training, cardio a lot when I was in Dubai and doing CrossFit, and I still managed to get some decent strength numbers for my body weight. I wasn't far off 100 kilo snatch, weighing 74 kilos and still being able to run a marathon like that.
I remember there was a period of time where you could snatch more than me for a little while, and you weighed 25 kilos less than me.
Yeah, and that I definitely attest that to my range of motion. You know, I was always flexible. You know that I could always get comfortable in those deeper positions, and I definitely think the reason I excelled so well at the snatch was because I was comfortable in those bottom positions. I was stable and strong in those bottom positions, and then I just built upon that by training the snatch. So yeah, I definitely think own the basics. Don't be scared to do a deload week, take a step back for recovery. You're not going to lose your gains. If anything, you're probably going to be better.
Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of people are scared of not doing things. I've just had a week off pretty much completely, other than just doing walking and a bit of swimming, and hit the gym yesterday and felt absolutely amazing, stronger than in the last month, just from that recovery. And I wasn't weaker, I was feeling stronger and like I could push a little bit more. So yeah, definitely don't be scared of that. But for me, mindset is, don't go in with the mindset of I have to do everything all the time. You should have smart training, focus sessions. You don't need to be doing all things all the time. So it should all be relevant to whatever goal you have at that time, whether that's an event, a competition, general fitness, and cater your training to that. It's no reason why you can't change up your training frequently and bias it towards what you want to achieve. Like I said, I've focused now on a bit more running, dropped a bit of strength training. But similarly, once I've got a few big events out of the way, I might then want to go back to looking at getting some big strength numbers. So I'll switch the train up, as you don't have to stick to the same program indefinitely.
And I think that's as well, if you're trying to do this for a long period of time, then it's probably actually beneficial to go through phases of focus on something specifically, getting quite good at running, changing direction, getting quite good at running over the course of a couple of years. If you realize if you just did that one sport forever, you'll probably get pretty sick of it by the end.
Yeah, because unless you're pro level and that is, your career, then that's different. But for us, generally, like there's something to be said from stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something. Like I said, me going to an open water swim, or a general CrossFitter going and doing a marathon or something like that. That was something we got a lot when we were coaching. I'm sure you still get it now. Is CrossFitters, then they always like to seek out a running goal. And that's awesome to see that, just stepping out of that comfort zone. And that's kind of what I wanted to build with the Intrepid Athlete, is showing people that they can do something that's completely different to what they're currently training for, and still be able to train and do what they love, but then incorporate some new training to then help them get towards that new goal.
Amazing. Lee, we'll close it out there, because I don't think we're going to be able to handle all the knowledge bombs. That was awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us there. Guys, I'm going to put the links to both of these books. I said I've got one of them, the Structured Balance one is awesome, but I think it's definitely worth having a look at that. Lee, where else can we go and find all your stuff? What's the best place for people to go and look for you?
So I've got my website and blog, which is theintrepid-athlete.com. So I'm getting back into the routine of putting out regular blog content.
I have noticed that. I appreciate consistency.
Yeah, so I'll, I'm like I'm stickler for routine. So I'm getting that stuff back out there. I'm about to just do a strength training for runners blog post as well. And that's where my programs are. And obviously I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well under the Intrepid Athlete. So I'll be posting up some vids of training a lot more as well on Instagram.
And then, will we ever see you in Dubai ever again?
I would love to come to Dubai again. So never say never. So I'm got the rest of this year. I've obviously quite a few things on and a few things next year. But after that, I'm looking at kind of stepping back from work a little bit and going more part-time. So never say never. And like I said, I'd love to come back, and I'm planning some round the world travel as well. So taking like a year out or so for some traveling. And obviously I'll be definitely stopping through Dubai on that. So yeah,
keep us posted.
I will.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah. No, cheers for having me on. And
I'm sure everyone will be hitting you up, telling you how amazing that was, and thanking you for your knowledge.
Yeah, and big shout out to obviously everyone that knows me out there. I miss being out there, miss all the guys, miss getting sweaty and taking our tops off.
I cannot wait to see the response because nobody knows. I think I told Em that's it. I'll be saying, I've got a mad guess for this week. It's going to be amazing. So people are going to go absolutely nuts when they find out. And it was actually, we dived into some stuff, deeper into some stuff than I thought we would have. So I thought it'd just be me and you chatting ship for 40 minutes, but it was actually very valuable. So
cool. Well, that's yeah. I mean, I'm happy to chat shit if you want as well for 40 minutes.
Maybe we'll stop the recording now, guys. Me and Leah are just going to keep chatting shit while I drink coffee. Have a good week, guys. I'll see you soon.
Cheers.